Hi there everybody, it's UK independent Stampin' Up demonstrator Helzie here from slimandstylish.stampingup.net. Thank you for joining me today. This is a quick image of the card that we're going to be making, and I'm going to be using the Layered Stripes Cling Stamp Set, that's a background stamp set, and the Fragrant Flowers Cling Stamp Set. These are both from the new mini catalogue from Stampin' Up and can be purchased from my store www.slimandstylish.stampingup.net. If you do want to order either of these, please do head over to my Instagram and get my current host code, because if you use my host code on purchase, I'll send you a little thank you gift. So let's get started. You're going to be wanting to use the big flower picture first. So I'm going to be using my Stamparatus for this to make sure that I get a really clean and really clear impression, because it is a big stamp. So the one thing to mention with this is this stamp is quite big. All right. Line it up and pop it towards the bottom of some scrap paper, and you can fit the other stamps that's needed. So you've got the hello and you've got the other little stamp, and then pop your magnets in between them to keep your paper straight. It's just a quicker way of getting all three of them done. Now, I hadn't cleaned my stamps properly before, so you can see they've already left an imprint. Try and make sure they're clean beforehand and don't follow my example. I'm terrible, but I'd made a few cards today because I'm just mass filming quite a few to get me through January and February on my channel, so I hadn't really cleaned up properly. So I'm stamping this a couple of times just to make sure that image is really shouting at me and I haven't missed any part. There's so much detail on these stamps, they're absolutely gorgeous. And you can see by going over a second time, it's now a really crisp and clear image. So I'm just going to move my Stamparatus away and I'm going to colour these in. Now I'm going to be doing some really sort of intense stamping blends with these. So I've got 4 colours for my green. This is dark and light evening evergreen and dark and light soft succulent. I've started with a dark evening evergreen in the middle, built it out with a light one, and then I've come in with a dark soft succulent to really spread it across, and the light soft succulent has just finished it up. And you can see it's blended in quite nicely together. I have sped this up because it did take a bit of time just to get the colours flowing the way I wanted to. This is dark and light rich raspberry and dark and light highland heather. Now for this one, I've just popped the darkest in random spaces along the shading, and then the lightest in the other petals that didn't have shading. So I've gone completely random with this. The dark highland heather I've covered most of the inside of the flower with, and I'm just using the light highland heather now to blend all the colours in together and to make sure there's no white left on the card. I've gone over it a couple of times just to move the ink around. After that, you want to cut the pieces out. The next part of this card is using the background stamps Layered Stripes. Now my hint with this is not to add the picture on the back. I always add the picture on the back of all of my stamps, but not on the background one, because it just makes them a bit more flexible by not having it. Now my other tip here is, because I want to do a full background with this stamp set, and I might want to stamp it twice, is I can't use my magnets on my cardstock because my cardstock is actually smaller than the stamp. So I'm going to be using the grid paper that's specially for the Stamparatus, and I'm just adding some runner adhesive, so this is seal, little bits of it on the background of this, and then I'm popping my fingers over it so it doesn't stick fully, it just tacks. And then I'm sticking the paper onto that, and I'm adding the magnets to the grid paper. So it's still being held down, but it's just not being held down in the conventional way, because as you can see, the stamp is bigger, and if I'd have put the magnets on the paper, it wouldn't have worked. So I'm going to ink this up using soft succulent, and the reason that I wanted to make sure the paper stayed in the right place is because I want to stamp this a couple of times, and you'll be able to see why when I pick this up. Because the ink pad is smaller than the stamp, you can see I've actually got a line going across about 3/4 of the way down. That's just where I had missed a little bit with the ink of the ink pad. So by being able to do it twice, and you can have a look now, it's a lot crisper and cleaner. So now I can put my lid back on my ink pad and I can remove this. And as it was only tacky, this will just peel off. Go delicately, don't try and pull it really quick, otherwise it is going to rip, but just delicately pull that off the paper. And there you go. Now this cardstock piece was 10.5 centimetres by 14.85 centimetres because I did intend on this being the full background piece of my card. But then I decided to cut it down and put a black backing on. So I've cut this at 9.5 centimetres by 14.35 centimetres, or I thought I had. I hadn't cut it right. When I then went to go and put it on my backing, you'll notice that I had actually cut it at 14.85 centimetres instead of 14.35. So I just had to go back and chop a little bit more off the bottom so that I could then add it onto my card base. And there you go. So next up with my card base, I'm going to stick the front onto the back. The black card mat is 10 centimetres by 14.35 centimetres. So it will still have a frame around it when it goes on my card. I'm using my black and white ribbon. I love this ribbon, and I'm just going to run it across about 3/4 of the way down the card, and then I'm going to position the flowers as I've just shown you. So I'm just going to run a tape line across there and stick it down because I'm going to do a faux bow, and that will be the last thing I do on the card at the very end. And then I'm just going to work out how I want the rest of this positioned. I'm sticking this onto the card base at the moment. The card base is basic white. It's the thick basic white. It's an A5 piece because I've already cut an A4 sheet in half to make it A5, and then I've scored it in half to make it into an A6 card base. And then I'm just going to look at how I want these on the card positioned. I'm going to try it in a couple of ways, and then I'm going to add dimensionals onto the back of the big piece. So what I like doing when I've got 2 or 3 pieces like this is having them at different heights. So I'm going to stick dimensionals onto the big piece. And I'm going to put a few on here because I definitely don't want it to get flat, especially if I do decide to post this one out. So I'm sticking 5 or 6 dimensionals onto the back. I'm going to stick this down. And then the little piece, I'm actually going to stick that with seal so it sticks flat, and that way I will get a real 3D effect going on this card, and it's just going to sit under there like that. But it will make it look like the top layer is really popping out at me because they're going to be at different layers. And then to finish it up, I'm going to pop the sentiment on. So because the sentiment's half hanging off the flower, I'm popping a dimensional on the one side, some flat adhesive on the other side, and sticking that down. Finally, I'm going to do myself a teeny tiny little faux bow with this ribbon and stick it on the card using a glue dot. And then I'm going to come in with the metallic enamel effects in the black shade, which I love, just to create a little bit of an embellishment around the card. And I'm just going to pop that on a couple of times. I really enjoyed doing this card. It was so much fun. This wasn't a stamp set that I originally was going to get, but like I said, it just jumped out at me and I wanted it, and I'm very glad I did because I just think it worked so well together. What do you think? Let me know in the comment box below. If you are new to my channel, please do subscribe and come back for the regular videos. And yes, enjoy. All of the items I've used today are available on my store, slimandstylish.stampingup.net, and don't forget to head to my Insta @slimandstylish to get the host code. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you all again soon. Have a lovely day. Bye.